It is approximately 1:08, and I am calling this charter meeting to open. I think that's the words I'm supposed to say. So now that we're open, and before we jump off into everything, as always, I want to take a personal moment just to say to everyone here, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for your commitment to the kids. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for not giving up, for not quitting, for not getting frustrated and to the point to where you just hit somebody with a chair or a table or something.
I was gonna say nobody said they weren't getting frustrated.
Right. That's why I wanted to make sure we put the caveat that you didn't actually hit someone with a chair, because I don't even want to say that you didn't hit someone. You just didn't use a chair. And so, but I really want to take a moment to appreciate everyone, right? You know, you always hear about, you know, the negative stuff. You hear about the stuff that isn't working. When do we stop just to say thank you for all of you who have committed yourselves to this work, and you're not giving up. You're not quitting. You're not walking away. It doesn't mean that we don't get frustrated. It doesn't mean that we're not angry. It doesn't mean that we're not bothered. We're just not bothered to the point to where we're just ready to walk away from everything. And some people have. And they probably did it for good reasons. And so I just want to personally say to those of you who have remained at the table, thank you. We make the changes when we stay at the table, not when we walk away from the table. So thank you for staying at the table. Thank you for not giving up on us as a district. Thank you for not giving up on us as a people. Thank you for continuing to believe in us as much as we believe in you. And I truly believe, and I don't just talk for the sake of talking, although I can do that. I do enjoy talking. But this is, I'm trying to speak to you now from the sentiments of my heart so that I really want to show you or say to you how much I care about the work that all of you are doing. Our staff, they work tirelessly. I mean, I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes they're not the brightest questions, and sometimes they're just like, what are you trying to say? And they figure out what I'm trying to say, and they come back and they say, I think this is what you were asking. And I'm like, yes. I don't know how you got that from what I said, but you did. So I just wanted to say to the staff, thank you so much. Again, I'm finna stop because I give myself a couple minutes to Terry over there. Now I appreciate all that you're doing. I'm trying to get this guy to come out to the church to do so well. I don't now, because of what he does. I think all of my video stuff is just terrible because he makes it seem so seamless that I'm like, man, I want him everywhere I go. And unfortunately, I can't have that. And to Kara, who keeps us, who, by the way, embarrassing time, had a birthday just the other day. Yeah. And so happy birthday to you. But she sits over there and she does all this stuff to put our meetings together to make sure that everything is right. Everything is up on the screen and is going the way it's supposed to go. And it's not very often that we pause to say her name, to say thank you for everything that you're doing over there without even being seen. Like the camera won't even pick her up. This is terrible. Let me get some new cameras.
Probably deserves that.
Okay. So I'm done. That's enough of my soapbox. Thank you all so much. And with that, I want to pass it over. Oscar is going to. This is my ride or die. We are in this together. We have decided that I'm going to, work with adult stuff. He's going to work on the youth center stuff. And we are truly, between the two of us, going to transform the way that alternative and charter schools are looked at within the district. And the ideas that he has, that Oscar has for what the kids can do, I don't think the district is ready. I don't think they're ready, but I am. And so I'm excited about him and what he brings to the table. And I would be remiss not to mention my other board colleagues who are, as I'm learning, they're like, okay, Herman, you need to do it this way, and you need to say that, and you need to make sure that you're trying to help me. They don't tell me what to do, but they be telling me like, that may not be the best way to go about it, but they work with me. And so I love them. I love them both so much. I love my team. I love each and every one of you, and I'm excited about what we have here. With that being said, Oscar is going to do the land acknowledgement, and then after that, I am done talking. I'm done talking. It goes over to Miss Karina who tells me what to do. And so
Yeah.
it's in her hands after that.
Within Portland Public Schools today, we serve students and families representing more than 150 different tribal nations, including descendants from our local nations of the Chinook, Klamath, Multnomah, Kaliptua, Clackamas, Cowlitz, Malala, and Tualatin. It is our obligation to teach accurate information, past and present, about the impact of colonialism and genocide on all of our students and make visible the multitude of Native families and many deserve ways Native communities and families are living present, diverse ways. And then, in addition to acknowledge the land and those that have been here since the beginning, we also remember our stolen siblings from Africa whose labor built the vast wealth of our country. These two communities and the atrocities that have been committed against them are intertwined due to the existence of a white supremacist world. Everything we have is due to stolen land and stolen labor, and every system and institution has impacted our lives is built upon this legacy. It is our job to speak truth into these spaces so that we can all begin to heal.
Mm.
Thank you, Oscar, and I just want to thank you, Director Grain, for starting us off. It's so nice to start off with such love.
I
Appreciate
agree.
that.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you too, Herman.
So just quickly, today we have a charter school application update. We are going to respond to questions that were raised last month with a charter school funding analysis information. And then we're going to shift over to some CBO information on just a per pupil reimbursement information, and then we have public comment. So that's on what we have. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tara.
Thank you, Karina. So I'm going to update you on the charter school application process. The reason I want to let you know about it now is because what it means is that in the fall, right away in September and October, there is going to be charter school and alternative programs committee business having to do with a new charter school application. So I do want you to know ahead of time to prepare for that. So right now, the timelines around charter school applications are determined by charter school law, the ORS 338, and OAR 581, but the specific dates and processes are determined by the district. So we have some district required elements of the charter school process, and they are aligned to the state's guideline and the laws for charter school applications. A district date that we have set so that it meets our time frame for contracting is that we ask charter schools to give us, charter school applicants to give us a letter of intent by May 1st of the year that they're going to put in an application. So they can give it to us before May 1st, but we need it by May 1st. We have already received one letter of intent, so we know we will be getting one charter school application. For those of you that were on the committee last year, it is the same group that had put in an application last year and then retracted it so that they could spend more time making a more robust application. So the next deadline we will have with them is on July 15th. They're required to turn in the application on that date because that will allow the statutory timelines to meet up with when contracts need to be completed by. So on July 15th, we will receive an application from the RISA Schoolhouse Charter School.
Say that again?
The RISA Schoolhouse Charter School.
RISA Schoolhouse? Oh, RISA.
And their current letter of intent says they will be a K-8 Montessori-based
Interesting.
charter school. Yeah. And I will also say that the district generally requires charter school applicants to either be a K-8, any grades within K-8, or for 1 year, and in alternating years, we accept applications for any grades that include 9 through 12.
Okay.
And that is so that we can pull specific expertise in analyzing the applications appropriately. This is actually a high school year but we gave this group a variance last year to allow them to come back in the following
Got
year because they wanted that time. At this
Okay.
time, we don't have any other information about any other charter schools that will start. So if we receive the application on July 15th, we do what's called a completeness check. So that's done internally through my office. If it's found to be complete, then we will give them that notification, let them know it's complete by August 15th. And then we have 60 days from that date to hold a public hearing about that application. So what that means for the Charter Schools and Alternative Programs Committee is that if everything proceeds apace, then by October 13th, there will have to be a public hearing regarding the charter school application. So that's just something to know for fall planning for the committee.
Okay.
Got it?
And then a little more information about that. The next slide is,
I just want to ask, are there any questions? Okay.
if everything else, assuming everything proceeds, then the full board vote will need to occur within 30 days of that public hearing, which if it is all close to those timelines will be by November 12th. At any point, there can be something that will delay. So maybe we don't find it complete. We give it back to them. They can complete it again. We get it back. Then we start the 60 days from that. So we may delay. This is sort of giving you the ideal timeline and the soonest that there might have to be things that the committee would be considering or that the board would be considering.
Is there a, so what if there is something wrong with it and we kick it back, is there a timeline associated with that as to how much time they have to get it back to us?
Yes, so if we find the initial application incomplete, we send it back and they have 30 days then to provide what information they need to submit a complete application. If at any point along the timeframe, the board determines we're going to deny the application, there is a lengthy appeal process. I shouldn't say lengthy, many stepped and detailed appeal process that has multiple timelines within it. So they appeal first back to the district, and the district looks again. Ideally, we've given them some feedback so they know why it was that they were not approved, and then they can work on that. They give it back to us. We look at it again. Eventually, if it's denied again, they can also appeal to the state, and the state can review, and that would be the Oregon Department of Education. And they would review and either say the district needs to look at this again, or say the district upholds the district decision, but the state can determine whether or not they want to sponsor that charter school. So it's we can end up
It's very
6
detailed.
months or 8 months further than that.
Anyway, so it's very detailed and it's outlined by the state.
Yeah.
What we do is what Tara's describing, is we try to make sure that all of our committee members know the process, and then if and when we get to a place in the fall where it's deemed complete and we're moving forward, then we will also sit down with the committee in the fall, or the committee chair in the fall, and just talk about what committee dates, and then as well as full board dates, because certain things have to happen by their certain progress markers that the state lays out.
And
So this is just the beginning. We don't have to get into all of
Right.
that now, but this really, it's just May 1st and July 1st that we just wanted to share with folks.
Right, these are just so
July
is
15th.
within our process, and I don't want to beat this horse, because I'm really just understanding, like trying to get understanding. Is within this process, is there an assignment made from the district to the charter school to help guide them through the application process, so that if they have questions, instead of submitting an incomplete process, if we have someone on our team that can walk with them?
So
I already
that's,
met with them.
so I was just gonna say, so that's the advantage to turning in your letter of intent prior to May 1st,
Mhm.
because as soon as this school, or this applicant rather, as soon as this applicant turned in their letter of intent, then we are allowed to provide technical assistance.
Okay.
We can't do things for them, but we can certainly give them the information, and that's what Tara's in the process
Okay.
currently of doing.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Tara and Jenny.
Yes.
that's perfect.
All right, so that's good news. So more to come on that. Okay, and then the next topic, we wanted to follow up with, last month there were questions raised around charter school funding and around pass-through amounts. And so we were requested to provide a funding analysis. And so we have done that and sent that in email. We also have, or on the board book, we also have paper copies. And we won't go through the entire memo, but we'll go through, kind of hit the high points with with our slide deck and provide additional information and certainly answer any questions and facilitate you all's discussion. Tara, do you want to
Sure.
start this, please?
First, just to quickly review what we went through the last meeting. The Oregon Charter School Law does set minimum pass-through rates for district-sponsored charter schools, and so the Oregon's the state law's minimum pass-through rates are 80% of the charter school rate for grades K through 8, schools that serve grades K through 8, and 95% of the charter school rate for high school grades.
And those are set by ODE.
Yes. For charter schools that are sponsored by the state, so I just talked about that process where they might be sponsored by the state. So for those schools, ODE has set the rate at 90% of the charter school rate for K through 8, and again 95% for high school rate. So that's just sort of the background.
And my first year on this committee, it was really helpful to then talk about what the district uses the money that we don't pass through for, because I think that's vital to say, like, that money actually goes to support then the charters. It's not like the district's profiting off of these schools. That this is a way, like, that we pay for the administration and the supports and
That
the,
is certainly.
so that was a
part of
helpful
it.
understanding as
Yeah,
well.
and that is, those details are in that document as well, that funding analysis document.
I will add that in my conversation with this, I believe we're saying that we're at 80%.
For K
For K through 8.
He was under the impression that we were possibly at 85%.
Who would?
You're not.
So we're at 80%. We follow the state minimum, except for we then 2 years ago.
Next slide.
The next slide we'll talk about that.
With different schools.
Yes. So,
Right.
But for it's a K5. So if we're talking about in this case for our district currently it's Kairos.
I wasn't talking about Kairos because I understood that Kairos was at a different percentage based on who they were serving within the thing, within their school, the demographic, the people within it.
Right. Just happens to be Kairos.
Right. It just so that just happens to be Kairos.
Correct.
But when I brought up 80% to the soup, he said I thought we were at 85.
Okay.
That's what he said out
Well,
loud.
he can't know everything.
Yeah. So
That's a lot to keep.
I'm saying if he thought we were at 85, then maybe we bring that up as a point of conversation. To raising a
So
table.
I,
Hey.
Well, I think
So
Guadalupe is allowed to make mistakes too and get the
Yeah.
numbers wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that just to share the information and then and encourage your discussion, but to share a little bit of more information. So we did the initial at the request of the committee, the Charter and Alternative School Committee at the time in 2020. We were asked to do a funding analysis, and so we looked at the pass-through rate and looked at whose charter schools were serving and what would be an opportunity to encourage charter schools, recognize, celebrate charter schools that were serving majority students, historically underserved students by race and ethnicity. And at that point, provided that information, and the committee made the decision, took it to the full board, and the full board voted to raise that rate for any charter school that meets the criteria at the K-8 level, to raise the pass-through rate from 80 to 95%.
And I think Amy was part of the group that spearheaded that, and again, trying to make changes over time.
I just said that to you.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
sensible. I'm kind of proud of that. Yeah. And I am too. She fought for that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had to convince me.
So at the March, so then kind of fast forward 2 years. So at the meeting last month, at the March 2022 meeting, The issue was raised again by some of our charter directors, by some of our charter and alternative program board committee members around current cost analysis. And so that's the memo that was prepared and that Tara and I provided. And we can share some more because what we were specifically asked were what were the current costs. To Director Lowry's point, what are some of the current costs in regards to supporting charter school programs and programming in the district? And then what would be the impact of increasing a base pass-through rate from 80 to 90% for charter schools, PPS sponsored charter schools? So there was conversation around the discrepancy of district sponsored versus state sponsored, and the state sponsored currently receives a higher rate.
Now would only be for K-8.
Correct.
That was
Correct, because the high schools are already receiving a 95%. If there were high schools.
Of which we have none, yeah.
We don't have any, at the current time. So the summary of the analysis, Claire, do you want to take this slide?
Sure, so if you want the details, they are in that analysis report. The summary is our current estimated cost of supporting the charter schools program, which includes the charter schools office and also additional PPS resources supporting charter schools, is about $710,000 per year. And the amount that PPS is estimated to pass through to charter schools at the current funding formulas, which is the 80, 90, or 95% funding for our current charter schools, is about $16,700,000. The total amount that PPS is estimated to receive from the state school fund for those charter school students in the 22-23 school year is nearly $20 million, $19,955,000.
So that's like a $2.5 million gap.
Good
Great.
head math.
Well, I took
It's
away
also
the
always expressed by
10,
that.
so it's 2.5.
Yeah.
So what do we do with the 2.5 million then?
So in the funding analysis, if you look at our, what we've outlined here is what the $710,000 costs, and everything in excess of that is absorbed into our general fund, and it's not specifically tracked for where it goes. It's used in district programs.
And I know that one of the things we talked about was that 710 does change a little bit. Like this year, we'll actually have increased expenses because we're potentially onboarding a new charter school.
I will say that yes, good point.
Or like
And
when we
the
close the
estimates
school.
that we're using
Legal.
are actually based on the year that we had the most intensive work within the district, which was the year we were closing down Trillium Charter Schools. So I used the estimates from legal and the estimates from board manager. Of all of those estimates were based on a big board impact year and a big staff impact year.
So,
But that is a very good point.
So we're already taking in a worst case scenario, considering a worst case scenario.
Trying, we don't really, let's hope.
Right.
Well, and I know that, and the thing that I remember was that one of the tricky things is if we have a charter student who decides to leave a charter school, then they need to have a place at our regular school. So that's the part of the rationale about keeping the 2.5 million. But I do think, I know what I've heard Director Green say, what I'm thinking is you want that 2.5 million then to go to the charter schools.
So I want us to look at moving it from, if we thought we were at 85, what does it look like to get us to 85?
So
And then let's put us there. So
cueing the next slide.
let's say,
Here we go. So the summary of the analysis in answer to the question. The summary of the analysis of increasing the pass-through from 80% to 90% of the charter school rate for current PPS K-8 charter schools shows that PPS is estimated to pass through, they would be estimated to pass through at an increased formula that would be 17,868. So that's
17 million.
And this is just
17
charter
million,
schools.
thank you.
This is just charter schools. This
This
is
is just
not
charter
CBOs.
Correct.
this is
correct.
just the
This
charter
all
school
just charter
situation.
school
Right.
funding.
And
This
this
is solely charter schools.
solely the charter schools that are sponsored by PPS.
Just
because
PPS,
the
right.
ODE.
Because they already
charter
get a
schools are
higher
already
rate.
They get it straight from
So they're already getting a higher rate. So we're really talking about the ones that I feel like we're responsible for.
So it takes it from 16,000,007 to 17,868.
If we increase it to 90% pass through from 80.
Correct.
And that's still based on your estimates come from a hectic year. So to speak to Ailey's reality that she's keeping, again, this is why I love my team. They talk about the things that I don't care about. And so, but it's very important to us. And so that's why we're balanced.
What is?
So I,
Well, we need to be
So
able to.
she's putting this from, so the estimates came from a hectic year.
Right.
So when we had a lot of chaos and a bunch of stuff was happening and we were having to expense.
Labor intensive.
Yeah, very
Labor
labor
intensive
intensive.
year.
So that's where the cost came from. And with that, we would still be under.
Right.
That's what I just heard.
Well, and I do know one of the things, like our costs are going up as our
Yeah, everything.
like
Lumber is
staffing costs go
ridiculous
up.
right
But if
now.
I
Don't
mean, I
build a
think
house.
if we kept, so it's 710 was the estimate. If we kept, 750, that would still give us plenty of room here.
So we could potentially raise it without hurting ourselves.
Well,
Well,
those
it's a hit from the general,
It's
it's
a
a hit
pie.
to the general fund. So the question is, look at our budget process, we'd have to account for where are where do we
2.5
wanna
million.
make those cuts in the
Yes.
budget process? And then, evaluate who is the student population in our charter schools, who is the student population that would be impacted, or how would our overall student population be impacted by a cut to the general fund?
Right. So where I'm at, I guess where I'm sitting and where I'm trying to live in this moment is these are pass-through dollars that we got from a charter school perspective, right? So these dollars came as a result of charter schools.
They are intended
For
to support the students that are enrolled in our charter school.
Okay.
it's from a per pupil.
All right. So from the charter schools.
Correct.
Not everybody.
The students
Charter
enrolled in
schools.
charter schools.
Right.
But they're
So-
still PPS students.
Yes, they are. And so I guess where I'm trying to live in the moment is how do we use the charter school funding that's coming in for the charter schools to help our charter schools who are struggling right now to eat, keep food on the table and buildings open. And I understand that we got a general fund that this, these extra funds, they help to offset some of the stuff that we're doing with it adds to the general fund. So therefore we don't get to say where this money goes. We can use it wherever we want to, and we can do it, and it helps us somewhere else. But the purpose of this fund, of this money, was to help these kids that are in these charter schools so that we don't close anybody.
So I think the thing for me is, like, I'm fine with jumping up the pass-through rate to 90, but I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is the administrative work of, like, overseeing our charters, especially like with Trillium. We need to make sure that, because that's money in support of students. And I know that, like, you can ask, like, I see you nodding, the village school, like, our charter office does help them serve the students. So
Right.
I'd be fine with us jumping up to the 90% pass-through, because I do think these dollars should follow students. And I know it'll mean we do have to make cuts in the general budget, and that's part of it. But for me, it's somewhat of a justice issue that the dollars should follow students, and I'd love to see us go 90 and 95% on the formula. I'd like to see that increase.
So this is the net difference,
Correct.
1.1. This is what the adjustment to the general fund would be,
Would cost.
1.16 million.
And I do have a couple slides because the other question, I just want to answer the
Yeah.
questions that were raised. And some of the questions that were also raised were who are our students in charter
Right.
schools? So we do have a little bit of information on that. I'm not trying to hurry the discussion, but I do want to just share
I don't feel
all of
hurried
our-
at all.
I just
don't
want to
feel
share
hurried.
all of our information is all.
Before we do that, I think one of my concerns about raising that would be we would be taking money out of the general fund that serves a more diverse student population. Our charter schools are a lot whiter than the rest of our schools.
I think that's where we're
So I
going
think
with the
that's-
next slide and the
Oscar,
student
that was a great
population.
transition.
That's a
There you
really
go.
good segue.
So the question, one
Let's
of the
step ahead of us
questions.
as usual.
One of the questions, and then here's some other funding sources that also are provided to the district to go to all schools, and our charter schools receive this as well. That to answer the question, and where Oscar was just taking us, was another question that was asked is who are the students who are served in our charter schools? And so that we have information provided regarding direct certification, which used to be called free and reduced lunch or farms data. We have historically underserved and combined, and then a combined underserved percentage for students. And then we have that, as you can see, the school, how each school compares to the district average, and then how the charter school average compares to the district average. And then the next slide is around racially who our students are.
And I will point out on that, clearly there's a broad diversity of schools and some who serve a much higher racially, historically underserved population than others. As well as on the previous slide, some that serve a much higher percentage of special education
Right,
students.
that was
some
high
serve,
too.
Some that serve a higher population of ELL students, which isn't outlined here. But it is that broad range in schools, similar honestly to how PPS and neighborhood schools also divide out. There's a very broad range.
Well, then we look at that average though.
Yes.
That's why we have.
Yeah,
district
so that
at
average,
the bottom.
exactly, that's the average at the bottom. The most significant you can tell is in that direct certification, the economic.
I hear what everybody is saying. I feel like we're the amount that we're scared of is too minute to care.
I don't agree with that.
$1.1 million.
I
We
mean,
just gave $743,000 to a group to help us evaluate and make sure that we're spending money right, which is cool. I think we need it. I'm not saying that we don't do that. I get it, but the thing that makes it hard is that we just need to comb through the budget. I think we can find $1.1 million. You can find that if you look for it, if you want to look for it. I just don't I don't think we should be moving in the scarcity mindset. We need to pay these people because they out there doing work and they're serving the kids, and this is stuff that's going to impact the kids directly. That's what I'm trying to do. This is going to be a direct impact to the kids that we're serving, and I get that they don't serve a lot of Black kids, and I get the fact that most of these little kids that go to these schools is little white kids, and you know what? I still love it because they don't, you know what I'm saying? They not quite fitting, or they're not learning the same way in a traditional school. So I don't want them to be in that school. I want them to be where every time they come to school, their mind will be like kicked off to like, I got to think of something differently. I got to try to process something differently. And so I get it that, you know what I'm saying, we want to make sure that, you know what I'm saying, we're doing right by Black people. And I got a Black agenda. Everybody know that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like if you raise the bottom, everybody on the top go up. And Black people on the bottom, no matter how you slice it. When you start looking at special education, because special education is a big deal, but you know who has it worse in special education? Black people. The only other people that are close to us are Latinos and Native Americans. Native Americans are almost invisible. We don't even see them sometimes. And so what I'm trying to look at is this is an adjustment. This is an adjustment that would immediately impact the kids that I'm serving, which is why I feel like we need to bring it. We need to bring it forward. We need to push the envelope to ask the question and see how anybody else feel about it.
I mean, the piece that's compelling to me here is that I want to be sure that the district's costs, diffuse costs for supporting our charter school students are covered.
Correct.
Because those are direct costs. We have a lot of indirect costs too, in terms of just sunk costs in our comprehensive neighborhood schools that these students come in and out of, or at least have the ability to come in and out of. But I want to be confident that the district's costs are covered. And then, you know, what's compelling is that there isn't an argument for why the rest of those dollars need to reside with the district when, generally speaking, you know, our dollars follow our students based on what then becomes a very complex formula for a large, complex organization. So I mean,
do wanna
unless
just share a couple more pieces of information. if
Yes.
that's it. So I do want to share that in districts that are similar, most similar to PPS, that have over 10,000 students, the overwhelming majority are also passing through at mandatory minimum of 80%.
I think it was the majority in your
Yeah.
staff report, all the large districts.
Not
There's
all.
a couple,
A couple do more.
that we had not heard back from, but 9 out of 12.
Yeah,
Out of those that we've heard back from, the overwhelming majority are at the 80%. So I wanted to
but that
share-
maybe just because that is what the state statute is and they haven't addressed it or
Unless the
examined it or looked at what their direct costs are.
I'm just sharing
Right,
information.
yeah.
I just want to share information. The other piece that I want to share that I think that's being raised, but it's in the memo, but it's not on the slide, so I just want to say it out loud for everybody at the meeting. So what we factored into the amount of the $710,000. Which is an estimate. So that's been brought up multiple times, and we all agree that that's an estimate. And what's factored into that estimate is the director, is Tara's position, is the program director of charter schools, is Jenny Braden's position, the senior administrative secretary for charter schools, and then percentages of other positions. So percentages of 15% of the area senior director of multiple pathways, 5% of general counsel, salary, 5% of the senior manager of fiscal operations, accounting, 5% of senior manager of human resources and the sub office, 3% each of the data analyst and a testing coordinator, 2% each of a fiscal services associate, a senior financial operations manager, a senior budget analyst, a board of education operations manager, a director of purchasing and contracting. So 2% of each of those positions. And then 2% of the charter general purpose grant as a general administrative rate.
What about the lawyer for when we gotta go to court for?
Well, they said he was up there. He was up there at the
Okay,
beginning.
the lawyer was in there, okay.
Yeah. And so you may think that there should be more of those, or
I think that's a staff call.
So I think I'm just sharing with you, that was our best estimate, and that's what is factored. It does not mean that things won't fluctuate over time, but this was our estimate for what we believe over the course of a school year, the percentage of anybody's salary based on their work and support of our charter schools. And that total came out to $710,823.
And the other thing I would, on page 4 at the bottom of that table, the estimated increase from 80 to 90% would still leave the district over and above that estimated $710,000 with $1.3 million.
Right.
So that would be a cushion
A
against
buffer.
Right,
something being
Right.
Direct
We're not
We're not taking it
asking
to
to
zero.
bring it down to what the, pass through everything
Exactly.
other than our direct costs.
So we still have a buffer,
Right.
a safety net, so to say.
Can we go back to the demographic charts, and Tara, can you answer the question? Oh,
I
sorry.
want to just say one
sorry.
thing, as we talk about the amount of money, Director Green, I heard you say, 1.1 million, we can find out wherever. And we have a saying in Scotland,
I've never been to Scotland.
I know, but I'm born there, so it's,
Notoriously cheap.
yeah, it's, mind the pence and the pounds will take care of themselves. So that's like mind the cents, pay attention to the cents, and then it's the pounds will take care of themselves. So I think as we're talking about these things, we're like, oh, we can find $1 million here, we can find we have, money to work with, we have millions of dollars, but there comes a point of diminishing returns where we do need to be thoughtful about, there are consequences to the choices we make that impact students directly.
Absolutely.
That really do have important consequences for students. And I think we need to be cognizant of that and be really careful when we say, oh, we can just find more money, because we can't always. And I understand the whole thing about scarcity mindset, but I also, there's a difference from my church budget where we are anti-scarcity mindset to when we're working with the state and other funding sources. But I just want us to be really cognizant of that. I am in favor of the 90% pass through, but I don't want to be dismissive about $1.1 million as not having an impact. That's about 11 teachers, which is significant to our kids.
People give to purpose, not to people. Money comes to purpose and not to people. What I'm telling us to invest in and what I'm pushing is that we invest in the purpose that these schools
Right, and I
are
agree
built
with
on.
that. I just
And the money always, it just, it shows up. And so maybe I'm wrong, and but this wouldn't be my first. I mean, I haven't done a school budget, so I haven't done $1 billion budget.
or like a
But I've played around with a $5 million budget. I've played around with a $2 million budget. I'm sitting on a $1.3 million budget that I just got for a house. So I understand the ideas around
Right.
making sure that we manage money and that we manage the money properly and that we do what we're supposed to do with the money, which is where I'm at. I'm looking at the money. And saying, let's do what this money was supposed to do and
I
make
agree with
sure
that, absolutely.
that we cover. I mean, I agree that we have to have the safety net. I think the other day when maybe it wasn't the other day, it was like one of the board meetings, I was like, let's give up all the money. I think I was doing that so that I could get us to one extreme so that we could come back. I ain't giving up all the money. Never. I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. But
it's a sensitive issue for me too, because we were given materials last night by some of the folks in the audience who had downright incorrect information about our budgeting and money. And so if that narrative is out there, if we as board members are saying, oh, we can just find the money, we've got plenty of it, it doesn't help us to say,
I get it.
we
Now,
have to make hard choices.
with that in mind, I'll eat that because I'm not playing into that stupidity either.
So I just want us to be, as board members, really careful that we say, like, we do want to do what's right for students. We want to put the money where it needs to be to have the impact for students. And we understand there are consequences when we make changes that will have impacts on students.
So
That's all I'm asking.
I hear you, and I'm with you.
So if we move the percentage up to 90, would we keep charters with over 50% historically underserved at 95?
Yep.
Is it possible that we can move that higher?
So that's, all of this is great board,
Well,
committee
because
discussion.
when you get close to that 5%, that's getting close to your direct costs.
Yeah, we're
You know,
at 95.
So yeah, I wouldn't be interested in revisiting that.
I would.
One minor, unintended consequence, which I don't, is that you could say that it decreases the incentive to diversify your student population, but I think you all have that goal in mind,
Yeah.
and within the constraints where you operate, you're doing the best you can. I believe that, but that was one of the reasons why it was compelling for us to make that policy change, because it's an incentive. But that's,
And now, if there was a
It's
change,
less
then
of
it
an
would be
incentive
from
if it's-
90 to 95.
Yeah,
but
right,
it's
still.
a-
I do want to see, I think that philosophically, knowing that we, still have a significant buffer, I think it's the right thing to do for the dollars to more directly follow the students. And I think honestly, would be a great example to set for other districts. We have a lot of barriers, a lot of statutory barriers that make it difficult to operate as a charter school in this state. So, I think if other districts want to pay attention, if they want to examine their own bottom lines and see how they're serving their charter schools, that's great. Though, before we move on, is Tara, the question I posed by email, that if you take Kairos, we had in your staff work here, which was excellent, really excellent. Thank you, really thorough.
I told you they're good, man.
There's one table where you have not this, but you have an aggregate number for just the charter schools. Maybe it was this, but if you pull Kairos out,
Yes.
what's the number?
I'm
Because
sorry that didn't get out even.
So-
that's okay. I only asked you like about 45 minutes ago. I was trying to pick it
And I
up
will,
for-
I will read the totals as Tara's passing it out. So if you pull Kairos out, then the charter
did the math.
total, the average for Black students is
Divided by
3.9%.
Mhm.
The average for Latino students, overall average for serving Latino students is 8.2%. The average for serving Native Americans stays the same at 0.3%. Pacific Islander stays the same at 0.3%, and multiracial becomes 6.7% as an average.
So
So-
it's worth talking about, because we have a commitment to examine everything through our racial equity and social justice lens. And so this is a shift of resources that is not really justified by that, using that perspective. I think the way we're having the conversation is justified by directly serving the students for whom it is intended, which is another noble purpose. It's a different noble purpose.
Than that of our racial equity
Exactly,
and social justice.
yeah.
It doesn't, and that not one isn't greater. It's just
Yeah.
this is a different, like you said, a different noble
With
purpose.
different needs.
Yes.
Yeah. But, and the differences aren't huge, even when you take Kairos out, but they're
noticeable.
significant.
They're noticeable.
Most significant for our Black students.
Or Latino.
Our
Eight-
Black students go from 11.1% to 3.9% as the charter average without Kairos.
And
I thought it was 8.5, not 11. Oh, I'm so,
8.5
8.5
is the PBS total, but 11.1 is the charter total with Kairos in it. 3.9 is the charter total without Kairos in it.
right.
Can I
So
call out Village
8.5 to
School and the Latino population? I know you all have worked really hard on recruiting and you can see that in your numbers.
also Portland Arthur Academy in the Black student population.
Yeah.
You can also see Emerson in the multiracial it very much, each school has its own different dynamic in the demographics.
Right, and I think one other thing we've talked about is sometimes the applications to charter schools are driven by word of mouth. So
Right.
people who know people say, oh, I had a really great experience at Village School when they, did not try to kill me in any way, shape, or form. And so I want to go there. Can I just say, you should go to Village School, Herman. It is so much fun. It is
After you
such a great
talked about it
school.
like this, I have to go
Yeah,
now.
they're amazing.
Just don't die.
Just don't die.
Just don't-
That's the message
No, to be clear, it was just an allergic
The
reaction.
initial story was at the beginning.
Oh yes,
of the
that's true. So
recorded
I
session.
had an allergic reaction to incense in one of the rooms. I was totally fine. I'm just a huge drama queen. They are lovely and amazing, and everyone should visit them.
Thank you for saying that on record.
Yes, on
I was
record.
gonna say, it's not the message we want to.
No. Yeah, they're amazing.
So we want to ask, are there any other questions you have for staff? Is there any other information you would like provided?
I would like to ask staff if you have any, I think we see a common desire here to recommend that we increase the pass-through rate for our charter schools to make it a little easier for them to do business and move that to the full board. I'd like to ask you both whether there are any unintended consequences that you see or
I think the consequence, I don't think it's I think the consequence is we've done school staffing
right?
and we're in the middle of a budget process. And so you have all already articulated that, and that's where we live on April 20th.
I was thinking about that, and the other thing we could consider is that if the board does pass this, that it becomes effective for the 23-24 school year. Because we're already in our budget process right now. So we would be asking our budget team to go back and make those cuts.
At $1 million.
I would be in support of delaying it until the 23-24 school year because of how late we are.
So we're saying not this school year when
Not-
you say 23.
Well, this budget year.
Right, so the budget year we're looking at right now is 22-23. That's the next school year. So this would be delayed to the 23-24 school year. Because we're already so far in the budget process for 22-23 that we would delay it to 23-24 so that when they start conceptualizing the budget, that this money is already set aside. Because I think we're going to have a very similar conversation about the CBO funding in a minute. So I think that this would, because it's April and not September, to give our staff the chance to prepare for this for the next year.
And I just want to balance that by saying we are in the budget season.
Right.
The budget season is not over, but I'm just naming. I was just answering the question.
Yeah, 'cause
that we are in
I guess what I was thinking was that we would put it, if we say, let's put this to vote, we can't vote.
We can recommend
No,
We
it to
can
the board.
recommend to the board.
We can't
Yeah.
vote. We can only recommend, I'm speaking to the record.
Yeah. It's important.
Yeah, it's very important. But I think what I was looking at is that we would look at both of these pieces and then we send them up the chain and then let Roberto and them come back and say this is too much. That we can't.
Our recommendation
or
is
let them say that we can't do
propose
this
for the-
right now. Because from what I believe I've heard from others is that if we're going to do it, this is the time to do it.
So who are the others?
See?
I mean, who are the others that are telling you
Their
not to
staff.
to do it?
They are staff, and it's not these staff. It's not these staff.
Well, I mean, this is better than after the budget is passed.
Yes, it is.
If
Yes, it
that's
is.
what you're saying.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And so, I would rather let them tell me that we can.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing, I think the way I understand it is that we as the committee get to make a recommendation to the full board, and then staff would maybe write a memo
Correct.
to say, here are the thoughts, and then the board would discuss
And
it
then
at the board meeting and we would vote on it. And one of the things that we could bring at that point is to delay it to the 23-24 school year.
So how about we recommend it, send it to the board?
Right. But what I'm
For
saying
the
is,
23-24 year.
yeah, what I'm saying is, if it comes out of this committee, the recommendation I would like to have on it is that we would recommend increasing the pass-through to 90% for the 23-24 school year. Then we can discuss that, or you could say, no, I want it to be for the 22-23 school year, and then it's up to Amy to make the deciding comment of what the recommendation looks like.
Yeah, because I'm with the 22-23.
I'm 23-24.
And then I feel like we should let staff tell us what they can and can't do. Instead of me speaking for them to say what they don't
Well,
think is appropriate.
I mean, mechanically, they could do it, part of the budget process. It's
They can
just
do
a
it.
question of, analyzing.
But we're saying that
opportunities.
what we're looking at, right, from what I'm hearing is that the reason that we would suggest delaying this is because what we're looking at right now is that, they've already begun the budget process and we'd be asking them to come back in. They've got a bunch of stuff that they're already dealing with. So now what we're not talking about is competence. We're talking about workload.
No,
No, I don't think that that's fair to say. And I think we're the leaders of the district. So if we tell the staff, if we say, superintendent,
exactly
we want
what
your
I'm
staff to do this, then they have to. What I'm saying is, that I understand that I think our staff is incredibly competent, but I think they
The
have,
most competent.
I think they have huge workloads. And I think with everything else we're asking for in the budget process, for some of the things that directors have asked for, this is something that I would be comfortable delaying. And so that as a leader of this district who understands, I think, our staff workload and our staff's high competence, I'm advocating for that because of my knowledge. And you have a different perspective,
Right,
and that's
because I'm
fine.
thinking about although our kids need this now. The kids that are being served, they need this now.
And that's the argument you can make.
Well,
and then
about all our kids.
about all of our kids,
Exactly.
right?
And that's going to
so-
be my push. Whenever
Well, and
we
it's
start
not like
talking about
this
budget
money
on
isn't-
every side, I'm going to be talking
Right.
about. It's going to always be what the kids need on all of them. That's why I like the idea that we do need a buffer. I'm not saying.
Yeah. Well,
but-
and it's not like the money is going to not help kids, right? In the interim, it is going to help kids, but it's just going to not go to the charter school kids. So, but again, we have a complex system, and there's a lot to balance. And so I think if we do this change, that might be 11 more teachers we have to cut out of schools who are already saying that this is a tough year. And so we have to balance all of those thoughts, which is why I'm recommending for 23-24. You're recommending for 22-23. And then we can have this discussion as a full board and see where it goes.
I would recommend implementation in the 23-24 school year so that we have a year to put it in the budget. We take that forward, we have a board discussion about it, there's a staff report about it, and at that point, if it is the will of the full board to go back and direct staff to figure out how to do it sooner, if there is a will to do it at all,
Then
then that can happen.
well, and you,
But yeah, it's a
I
starting-
might change
it's a
my
starting
mind
place.
to 22-23, right? Or you might change your mind to 23-24 when we have the staff analysis and the full board discussion. And that's the great thing about our system is we have those conversations and we learn more and we adjust. So this committee will make a recommendation out to the board, and then the board gets to work on it together.
Okay, let's send it to the board.
So
Let's
we,
send it to the board that you want.
we send it to the board with the 23-24 recommendation.
And then they get to make an analysis, and then as a board, we can discuss
Right.
whether or not we want that to change for the 22-23.
Or whether or not we want it at all. We
Send
don't
it
know
up.
how our board calls.
Yeah, let's send it up. Let's send it
Yeah.
up.
I also want to say that I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole with Claire Hertz to really investigate the PERS issue even further, and I'm sure you guys probably understand it more deeply than I did, just to see if there's any way to bring our charters under our umbrella. And there isn't without your staffs completely being PPS employees, which all sorts of things which make you not a charter, basically. So I did for my own edification explore that so that I really understood if there was any possible recourse there in terms of what you're paying for your health insurance. But one of the things that was interesting to me about that conversation is that, I mean, as far as I know, there's not a very active statewide charter association that like advocates effectively for you or creates, has like a volume, it issues bonds on behalf of charters across the state, which there could and should be for things like that, for health insurance. So that's different. But for my own understanding and satisfaction, I did go down that road, and there's nothing we can do to relieve your costs on that front.
Thank you for
Thank you
working
for
on
your
that, Amy.
advocacy.
Yeah, because I think there are ways we can support charters other than the pass-through, right? And I think conversations like that is what can we do about PERS is one of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's maybe some legislative.
Our goal is always to make any student affiliated with PPS in any form as successful as they can be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, now that we've solved charter schools, are we moving on to CBOs?
Your turn.
Yes, but can I ask a question?
Yes.
So we provided what we were asked to provide, and so I guess if you want any additional information, we would just need to know what you would want.
How do we get it to the board? Is there anything I need to do?
No.
And I don't,
we're gonna raise in the
And I-
budget.
I was just gonna say, I don't know that you need to answer that right this minute, but I just wanna be clear if
Well, the board has to approve a change to the policy. Well, it's not even a
I'm just
policy.
curious if you wanted, I'm curious if
It's
you
a
wanna
new
share this
resolution.
memo with the rest of the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So when
All right,
we
I'm just
changed
trying
it
to be-
when we changed it before, we'll just go back to that resolution.
I think, yeah, and I feel like if you wanna bring it for discussion, I'm wondering, we should let the superintendent and Claire know right away as the discussion around the superintendent's, but I think it's gonna fit well with the budget discussion that you guys are gonna have next week when he presents his budget.
Yes.
And you guys ask questions, I think
Yes.
that's a natural time
Yeah.
to raise.
Yeah. I just want to, if there's something that I need to do to get this moved forward for board discussion, I need to know what that is. If like I need to send an email, because if someone doesn't tell me exactly what to do, I'm probably not going to know what to do. And I don't want it to be like, oh, well, Director Green, you didn't send this email to the person then behind the curtain, and therefore it didn't happen. So if what I'm hearing is y'all have everything that you need to get Claire in the soup, this memo, this work that we've done, and get it ready to go for board discussion, and there's nothing else for me to do about the charter schools, then we can move to the CBOs.
And I can double check with them what we need, but I also.
And I would ask that you slightly
With the
amend
23,
this-
24 was what we're suggesting, right?
Yes.
I'm just saying that I want to make sure that everything that we discussed, that that I'm not tainting it. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
okay.
And I would just ask the slight amendment to this fabulous staff report by including this chart that leaves Kairos out and shows what the demographics are for just the group that currently receives the 80%.
sure. Me too. Okay.
Thanks.
You're-
Really, really good work. It was
Fantastic.
a lot to digest and a lot to analyze, and it was really helpful.
Okay, so our next topic, we'll shift, and I will, tag team this with Miss Erica, is, there were questions around, CBO School Funding. And so we just wanted to share, information around our current practice or the state's current guidance, around funding for our contracted alternative schools. And so it comes, the guidance is in ORS 336.635, which talks about enrollment and funding in alt-ed programs, in alt-ed schools. And so, do you want to read this, Erica?
Sure. For each full-time equivalent student enrolled in the alternative education program, the resident school district shall pay the actual cost of the program or an amount at least equivalent to 80% of the district's estimated current year's average per student net operating expenditure, whichever is less, in accordance with the rules adopted by the State Board of Education. The alternative education program is accountable for the expenditures of all state school fund monies and other local school support monies, and shall provide the resident school district with an annual statement of the expenditures.
Right.
And so this is kind of what has,
So that's our
Statute
that's the
states.
statute.
Yeah.
That we follow. And then, so the contractual relationship with Portland Public and our contracted alternative schools previously contained the reimbursement rate as outlined that we just read in ORS 336.635, section 4 of the 80% of district operating costs, of net operating costs. And so, but in 2021, and I would again thank Director Constam and others on the committee. In 2021, the PPS Charter and Alternative School Board Committee recommended to the superintendent and the Board of Education Directors to raise the rate per pupil reimbursement from 80% to 90% of district NOE for students enrolled in CBO schools. So as a result, Superintendent Guerrero incorporated this increase in his proposed budget, and the Board of Education approved this increase in the 21-22 current school year budget with a new pass-through rate of 90% of NOE per pupil for each student enrolled in CBOs. You want to tag team, Erica, you want to take this one?
Sure. So at the request of CBO school leaders, the contracts for the 21-22 school year included a choice of receiving, which we touched upon in an earlier meeting, an initial payment or advance, which was a percentage of the total contract for either 10 or 15%. And the idea with this was, in addition to what we had previously understood was an issue and why we initially started the advances, was the need that they need to pay employees for that first start of the year before they get reimbursed. So the idea with the advance was to ensure that they had enough funds to hire and pay their employees. Monthly billing was received for reimbursement of per pupil services, and then we true up monthly to ensure that by the end of the contract period, the initial payment advance has been leveled out. So we basically take a percentage of that out of the future payments so that at the end we've recouped all that advance money in addition to what they've, invoiced us for each month.
And then similar to, this is kind of, you've seen this before, but similar to our charter schools, the additional funding streams that are designated to go to all schools or follow all students are also provided to our contracted alternative schools and include the SIA funds, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. We have PPS schools qualifying for equity allocations in the same manner as other schools, and CBO high schools receive some Measure 98 funding to support dropout prevention, career and technical education, and post-secondary readiness for high school. So that, and then the request again was looking at who are our students enrolled in contracted alternative schools, and so we have similar to the information that was provided for charter schools. We have provided the next two slides to share that information as well. And it's a little bit smaller font because there's more schools. So
I was
Right.
thinking about that as I put the presentation together. I was like, oh,
Just stay there for a second, please.
yeah, for sure.
And so once again, we've
So-
compared the CBO total and the PPS district total, but you can definitely see the impact on direct, individual institutions based on their individual percentages.
So in part because we were asked information about charter schools and contracted alternative schools, we did do an apples to apples with regard to the October 1 poll date. And you will hear often from every person that connects with alternative schools that the enrollment typically increases after October 1. Certainly increases in a typical year, to increases second semester for sure. So acknowledging that, and that these are the October 1 dates, but they then would be parallel to the charter school dates on the October 1 date, and the district rates are then the same.
Yes,
Back
and to
to
give
the-
an, just to give an example though, so some of these schools serve, I looked at yesterday's count date, so some of them serve 50 more students than they did on October 1st.
Right.
So that number can slide pretty dramatically, especially in the spring term, because of those students that they serve.
And a place like Helen's View, I know serves kids from other districts, right?
They
So
do, but primarily,
Okay, but these numbers are the
These are
PBS
PBS,
kids.
just-
Yes,
PBS,
like
yes,
open
yes.
schools, mostly other districts.
yes, yes, this is just representative of the PBS students that they serve.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but I wanted to.
Yes, no, thanks for checking.
But when you say true up, do you mean both true up in terms of reimbursable expenses and in terms of enrollment?
So when we're talking about true up, we're really talking about the per pupil funding.
So
So-
that is,
so
so
that's-
that does take into account enrollment fluctuation.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
based on
Okay,
enrollment.
okay,
So they bill us at the end of the month for the students that they served that previous month.
Right.
And then we pay them the following month for the students that they served in the days that they served them in the previous month.
got it.
And those fluctuations in enrollment, obviously, month to month can be a lot of highs and
Got it.
lows.
Got it.
So they could have a staff of
Especially
10
last year.
teachers, and then all of a sudden they have half the students. Are they supposed to fire
Right.
half the teachers the next
Right.
month and then hope
And
they
then-
get them back
right.
the next month?
Right.
So the reimbursement would take place with regard to purchases with ESSER dollars or things like that. We're talking about, when we're talking about true
Got-
up, we're
yes.
talking about enrollment
Enrollment,
and student populate enrollment.
Got
The
it.
funds are set. So we'll give everybody a second, I guess, to pour over the data, and we can, when we're ready to look at the racially historically underserved numbers, we can switch to the next slide. Just let us know.
I'm good with this.
We are, is 90% the amount that's in the budget for 22-23?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's, the board passed that, this is our,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, because we were talking about 21-22 and I wasn't sure what was in the 22-23 budget.
Oh, yeah, that's when we
That's the
passed it
expectation.
for
Yeah.
the rest of
Maternity.
forever.
The new reimbursement for the district. Yeah.
I do want to say, we've done some good work on charter.
Yeah.
And we didn't used to have any venue for any of these conversations. It
Yeah.
used to be just a little committee that labored to review charter renewals.
And Amy changed that when she was chair.
I did. Yes, I did.
I'm trying to celebrate the good things because we
I
get beaten
know.
up so much. So it's like when we
have a long history of
advocate
caring about these kids.
So I will just say, we're gonna see more specifically around race at the next slide, but I do just wanna say, so our combined underserved is 72% among CBOs compared to the district's 49.2% on October 1, and then our students in special education for CBOs on October 1st was 28.3%, and you can see that some schools certainly have much higher percentages than that, but as an average, it was 28.3% to the district's average of 15.2%.
With some schools serving very close to 50%, and some even exceeding.
Oops. There we go.
I also just want to note that there's something to note with the concentration of students with additional needs in these communities, that they are very small. So while we say 50% of a school with 2,000 people might be different than 50% of a school with 100 people. Because that's not really easy to see.
The other thing that we don't always see when we look at these some of these schools, when we start thinking about our alternative schools, is that the kids that go to these schools are kids for whatever. Again, they didn't do it in regular school, and some of our alternative schools, they feel like it's if you can't get it here, you can't make it. And so if you take a Helen's View, who, saying kids, they'll tell you this is the last stop. If you can't make it in Helensview, then you don't make it anywhere within the PPS district. You're done for. That's how the kids themselves feel from what they've told me from conversation. And so what data and numbers won't show you is the mindsets of a lot of the kids in these spaces, and their self-worth, how they feel about themselves, oftentimes is down. Those kids oftentimes come from generational high poverty. They come from generational traumatic and seasons. I mean, these are the kids who they need the most support. I mean, they just need it. But data, looking at numbers, won't show you that. When you look at the numbers, you see 150
This
kids.
This shows a lot of the other one of the combined underserved. I mean,
I
this
see-
shows some of that.
I see crime. I see
Yeah.
I see broken communities. I see
Trauma.
dilapidated
Yeah.
dilapidated communities.
Yeah.
I see,
Which is
saying
why
people
the
that are
teachers-
dealing with mental
We
stuff.
can't let the teachers go midway through
And-
the year because there's lower enrollment, because these are the teachers, like I'm really good friends with one of the teachers at Mount Scott, and like it takes a specific kind of person to
Right.
really understand all of that, what the kids are coming
And-
with, and to love them and connect with them and help empower them for success and to help them see themselves differently. So another thing you've been really concerned about is when the enrollment goes down and they lose money, like how do we help the CBOs to maintain so that second semester when the kids do show up
Or just the next month.
or the next
Yeah.
Or I was going to say,
they
when you
have-
got to go home.
So I mean, I think that's the problem you've been trying to solve this year with the CBOs is how do we have those schools resourced to the point that they're able, when the kids do show up, that they have that expert staff that can deal with the crime and the trauma and the broken families and the broken communities that you're mentioning.
I'm so glad you bring that up, just because, when we do our site reviews, and obviously we're in the schools a lot,
Oh, sorry.
looking at this
Joe.
behind me,
You keep trying to, there's going to be a public comment section, man.
Yeah, trying to make faces, but, one of the things that we hear, I mean, and I think I've mentioned this before, the number one thing that students say, what's different about this school?
The teachers.
Teachers.
Yeah, but, or what
Teachers.
did one of Joe's kids say on OPB today? Did you hear that interview? It was beautiful. It was a whole long interview thing on OPB today.
That's what happens when you sit in a board meeting all
where
morning.
this kid said it's like a whole school full of parents. Every single person in this building cares about me, cares about my academic success, knows that I can do it, picks me up when I'm down.
And we have a way to quantify that in our successful school survey as well. And that is the thing, the student
It was all
teacher
about
relationships is very important.
But is
So
there a
the-
way for us to
I forget the kids' name.
rethink the way I know we talked about the percentages and how it's based on NOE, but is there a way in the contract to have like a baseline funding?
Well,
Way to go,
wait,
Ailey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we move on? Because I think we have a sequence of slides
Great.
that's going to help us.
You went there.
What's unclear to me is what are we talking about here? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Because we had a couple of questions. We had an issue that was mechanical that we addressed at the beginning of the year that was really about cash flow. And I know we offered some different options in terms of just how payments were made. And then I think we have another issue that's altogether different,
Correct.
which is about how do we, or is it possible to insulate our CBOs from these radical fluctuations
Correct.
in enrollment, particularly during the, these very unpredictable last 2 years. So
Yeah.
that's what I see, but I'm not clear what we're
No,
trying to
I think y'all are dead on to where this conversation is going to go. I'm going to let them keep driving.
Go for it.
So one of the things, I'm glad y'all teed this up. Y'all, first of all, y'all are amazing. I'm telling y'all, I didn't get out my head. We've been talking about this, even though we ain't been talking about this. One of the things, so I met with Clay.
Amy and I have been on this committee. This is your third year.
This is my day one.
Your language, yeah.
So I met with, I spoke with Roberto, I spoke with Claire. I reached out to, I want to say his name is Whoopfong down at ODE, to find out what are our limitations as a school district. What can we do and what can't we do, and are we limited on how we structure our payments to our CBOs, because I didn't even want to come to the board, to the committee, to the Norberto, and I didn't even want to come to them with something illegal.
That's a really good rule of thumb.
That's a low bar.
Right. So, in reaching out to them to say, do we have limitations? What can we do? It's once it's been given to us and once it's been assigned to us based on the ADMW, because they see the ADMW of our schools, our CBOs, and what they're supposed to have, and so they issue that to us. Now, once they give that to us, how we disperse that out, what that looks like, is up to us, or each, not just us, but every school district as a district to figure out what they want to do. What I wanted to look at is, how do we, as Ailey was speaking to, how do we relieve some of the pressure, take some of the pressure off so that we're not going month to month? Like in the midst of COVID, as a school district, we have a rolling 2 years. And so we have this rolling cycle where we get our money and then we're going to get the same amount every single time. And then at the end of the fiscal year, there comes a true up time. Now, this true up happens several times throughout the year. It's not just like, at the end of the year you get it. It happens like 3 or 4 times throughout the year where you get to see where you're at, how you're going, and whether or not you're on track to meet where we're supposed to be at. And so, then at the end, we got to pay what we owe, or they reduce the amount that we owe the following year. So they don't even wait for us to give them the money back. They just say, you know what, we're not giving you this. You're going to get this much money less the following year. Sort of like that. So what I was asking is, as a form of like just showing partnership and that we care about our CBOs and different ones, what would it look like for us as a school district to put our charter schools, our alternative schools, our CBOs, on the same type of cycle that we as a district is on? So instead of them having to go month to month, they get it based on a number that they need to be a part of when we sit down and talk about it, to figure out, what this number is going to be. And it's an average based on like, this is what your pre-enrollment was prior to COVID. This is sort of where you're at right now. And then we sort of find this happy medium space in the middle. And for these next few months or this next quarter, or however the cycle is that we as PPS are on, we say, this is how much you're going to get. I'm going to use small numbers because I can't think that big. You're going to get $10,000 a month every month. You know what I'm saying? No matter what. I don't care if you got this many students or that many students. This is what you're going to get. So now as a school, as an alternative school, they know how much they've got coming in, and it's based on an average. So those schools that are being impacted by COVID, they're not hurting as much, because they've got this bar that they can speak to. Now the focus becomes, how do I educate my kids versus how do I chase the dollars?
So when you talk about the truing up that PPS does, do we do that? I don't think do we quarterly report to the state how much
we do 4 times a year per Claire. We do 4 times a year. There's the May, there's October, there's spring.
October.
So we do it 4 times a year is when we
CBOs.
No, for us as a school district.
We do.
As a school district, we have to report to ODE
4 times a year.
4 times a year, stating that this is where we're at based on what we thought we were going to be. And this is how either close we are to how much we were supposed to get, either below or beneath.
So what you're saying is, can we have our CBOs go to our same
cycle
so that they have a little more?
They got a buffer.
So what would that look like, Erica?
Hey,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, here's my question. So we get paid by the state for the number of students served.
Correct.
So,
not for this year. So it's based on the previous year.
Based on the previous
so with
year.
we got, let's say we projected based on our numbers that what we had there, we got a check for 50,000 students. We only had 30,000 students in.
Pay that money back.
And so now those other students, they start coming in, trickling here and there, but we got a rolling cycle. So, because it's the better of 2 years. So-
And I mean, what I might add, I mean, there's also the other factor to consider that a lot of these students without these interventions might actually not be enrolled at all, and then we
Right.
would not get any money.
Then we don't get
Not to
anything.
think about students in that
As-
way,
but-
Wow.
Right.
You go straight to the deep end of kids don't go to school.
I love students.
We want them to go
I
to
love
school.
students, for the
Yes.
record. I love all students and their inherent
This
worth.
is a problem that has always existed, but it's like
Oregon funding is-
massively amplified
Yeah, for the
in
CBOs.
COVID.
For,
So-
and for specifically for
Certain
our
communities
our alternative
Yeah.
schools and these different communities. So what we're trying to do is, I'm not trying to give them anything special. This isn't special. This is putting you on the same
We
scale.
should give them something special.
This is putting you on, man. Look, this, you're gonna get the same thing that we get. True up is true up, and you pay what you owe. I believe that they have competent people that work within these alternative schools. I believe the executive directors and different ones that work in these schools, I believe they can count. I believe that they know how much money they got, and they know where it's coming from. And so for me to say, well, what are they going to do if they, and not, I know we need to think about those things. Don't get me wrong. No harm and foul. But for me to sit here and say, well, what are they going to do if they can't pay? They knew that they knew what they were getting into. I think they knew. I don't want to set anybody up for a failure, but if I believe in the asset base that these CFOs know how to count, and they can see money and they can see where these dollars are coming from, they're going to see long before they get to this deficit space over here. They're going to know that they're coming up short. So that's why when we're doing this first true up, second true up, third true up, fourth true up, that's going to be their scale to say, hey, look, slow down, because y'all are giving me way more money than what I'm actually having students for. At this rate, I'm going to end up owing you way more than I can afford to pay you back. So stop giving me this money. I want this.
Okay, so you're proposing to move to a quarter model, and what I would like to
Or
hear.
the school model. I don't know. I don't know that.
What I would like to hear is from staff and maybe from a CBO, like what the pluses and minuses of that might be. But Karina, go ahead with what you were gonna say.
I just want to share one piece of information, then I'm going to ask Erica to share a piece of information. And the piece of information I just want to share, because I've heard, and just to add to it, and is that when one of the questions, so we've been receiving questions and we're trying to answer questions as we receive. So one of the questions that has come to us was around a 2-year cycle. And just to be clear, we are not allowed to do a 2-year cycle, so we need to do things within a fiscal year.
Right.
So the contract would be within the conversation, as I understand it, is the parameters are within a 12-month cycle. So I just want to share
Whatever that
that
fiscal year is.
information.
So there's some
And-
guardrails for us.
And then I just want to share, so I think one of the things that we have heard is we've heard various things from various schools, because we have different schools
With
with
different-
different needs.
Right.
And so we asked some questions to our schools around some of these questions around what percent or around true up. And I just want Erica to share kind of what we received.
Yes, and I think, PPS being one contract of many that institutions hold and serving different numbers of students, there's many things that each CBO leader needs to weigh in order to determine how they receive their contracts, either reimbursement or in advance. And so I would say the majority of them, we need to make sure that whatever is developed, if something new is developed, that we give it as an option, and that we don't request that all schools must take this option. And so I just wanted to put that out there that, many of the school leaders feel like they would rather have it done on reimbursement, because for their very small fiscal teams, once again, we're talking about small
One
outfits,
person.
small operations, they might not have the ability to manage, and so they would prefer to keep it as is. But then there are some institutions that serve larger numbers that would and have better ideas of what would be projected and having that would prefer to have a model where it was more standardized, so that they could focus more on the staff that they have and keeping those people fed.
Right.
And, making sure that they're doing good work.
And we currently have a range in how they choose to take,
Yes.
how and when they choose to take their disbursements.
Right now, currently they're reimbursed monthly, all of them consistently. Helen's View being an outlier because MESD. But all of them do monthly reimbursement, and they all have an option of a 10%, 0%, 10%, or 15% advance at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And not all of them, they take a range of those options.
Okay.
Advances.
So,
Okay.
so one option might be the quarterly true up, one option that we could talk about as we're making changes, one option could be a higher percentage at the beginning. Like there are some choices here if we're talking about trying to provide some stability, correct?
Erica, how many schools took the 15% this year?
I don't think any took the 15% things.
So, and I think that one of the things that we did was when we asked we asked each school what percentage, if they would like to your point about a greater advance, 5 out of 7 had said they would like it the same as it currently is.
Okay. I think one of the schools that didn't say that.
Right.
So
Yeah, but we need to look at the communities that have been most impacted by the loss of enrollment, and those are the programs that are going to see, you know, obviously we can make a connection. Clearly, Rosemary Anderson serving the community that was so deeply impacted over the last few years has had a loss of enrollment. So it would make sense that certain programs like that need to build in more consistency for their programs.
So is it, do we have more to go through here, or can?
No, this was really just trying to answer questions that have come to us. And so trying to provide information back for the conversation, and I just want to say I appreciate Director Green, you getting information both from the state and from Director.
I like that our new standard is we can propose things that are stupid, but we can't propose things that are illegal.
We can't do illegal. We can't
And
do.
maybe we can propose things that are brilliant as
Yeah,
well.
we.
but
That's about it.
the
But
bars
we
is
cannot do illegal.
Definitely a soundbite.
So
Yeah.
Joe, I know that you have spoken directly to this before in this venue, but not while we were immersed in these details like now. So I might ask you to just sort of repeat what your day-to-day challenges look like in this respect.
And what I'd like to
And-
hear is what would you do? Like if you could be in charge of this process, if you were sitting here and could make the decision about how we might change this, what would the positive be? Like what would you desire the financial?
Don't give him that much power.
But also,
Don't give Joe that much power. You don't want to. You don't want to do that.
He can tell us. It doesn't mean we have to do it.
yes to what Amy just said, but also recognizing that the constraints are the constraints in
Yeah.
terms of
1 year.
we're sending to you what we're getting from the state, but we're talking about how and when we do that.
I think, well, thanks, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the discussion. I think it's important, since we've been a long-term partner, we're amongst friends here.
Absolutely.
I think, for me, having been in this business for about 27 years now, I would say you have to have this kind of conversation within a larger construct, right? And, you know, it was mentioned about the racial equity things. So we serve, you guys know, we're 80% kids of color. We used to be worried about that. And, you know, I'll start with facilities. So you talk about equity, you talk about what our students need, what they should have, and what they deserve. We serve PPS students, and, you know, I'm driving around, and, you know, I go by Grants, beautiful, you know, so I'm looking at the facilities. And now we're talking about Jeff, I live across the street from Jeff. You know, we're talking about beautifying the facility. So, you know, from an equity standpoint, I'm thinking, wow, you know, how, I need the pressure to provide those kinds of facilities for our students is a lot. And then you take that and then you think about special ed. We talked about special ed. We've got 70, we're down. We're a third special ed students. And when you do the math there, according to my math, we get 2 FTE from the district. And I believe, according to my math, that the district keeps 800,000.
What do you mean?
That's my math.
What do you mean?
So
Specifically around the
special ed
federal
students are
pass?
rated-
Based on the ADMW.
They're rated.
We provide a special.
There was a time where POIC provided managed IEPs and hired special ed instructors. We provided special ed
And that's provided.
with our employees. And during that time, we struggled to get students on IEPs when the money followed the student. Well, when the money stayed within the district, we got an influx of special ed students. And again, when you do the math, my understanding is some students are even more than, depending on their diagnosis, they're more than just 2. They're even more. So when you think about that, you think about facilities, you think about the high number of special ed students, you think about students of color, Black students and brown students in particular, and we're a partner. Okay. Historically, we've either met or exceeded our. That's how we started off as a really small school. Year after year, we've served more kids, and in order to serve more kids, we've had to raise a lot more money to provide the wraparound services to serve the kids that we serve that have so many needs. And so when you have a year like now, and I've been talking about this for years, but it wasn't that big of a deal because we always met, we were always in it. But then you have this year where, I'm at 40%. So, I'm at 60% enrollment. So that means I'm guesstimating we're leaving $1.8 million that we're not going to earn. So fortunately, with all that's been going on, we've been able to fundraise. The ESSER funds have helped. So the community and the federal dollars, state dollars have been very helpful. But we know those are going away. And so if we had more time to adjust to the declining enrollment, I wouldn't have to do what I'm probably going to have to do, and that is close one of the campuses. Now, the problem with doing that for us is that our North Campus is neutral in terms of the conflicts that we like to address. New Columbia, Flint's not so much. So again, if we were paid, if I knew that I had some time to adjust, that would make this a heck of a lot easier. It would also allow me to fundraise specifically to address the issue without disrupting the entire process. Now, think about how this traumatizes our educators. It's all we talk about. What are you going to cut? When you cut them? How's this going to work? All the time. Where are the students? Where you got to go get them? You got to go get them. And that's just a lot of pressure and a lot of focus not on instruction.
So, Joe, can you talk a little bit about the factors that are affecting and that you think will continue to affect your enrollment? So it's not just COVID, it's community violence, it's kids not wanting to be somewhere, not wanting to be in an environment with other
Safety
students
elements.
or a place where people know where they are. I mean, can you project out on that?
Yeah, so I believe that it's going to take us probably 2 more years to get back up to where we started. And I think when I look at our data, we lost a lot of the older kids. They checked out or went to work.
Yeah, I mean, so did we.
Yeah.
We don't have good analytics on it, but so did we as a system overall.
And so I think that's going to, as time moves forward, the kids that we have now that are behind and struggling will then replace those kids that we used to serve that were 19, 20, sometimes even 21. So I just think it's just a churn.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this question about whether we do true ups on quarterly or that's a conversation for a bigger group of maybe the CBOs and some of what Erica said, but that the real issue here is that because of COVID, there's been so much loss that it's going to take more than just changing the way we true up to really solve the problems that you're experiencing.
Yes, however, I think long term, our students, if we were to come up with a way to fund Rosemary, since the other schools aren't interested, or some schools aren't interested, for Rosemary Anderson, we would have a better product.
So if you had this so that you could say, I know I'm gonna get X amount of money for X amount of time, and then I know at this point in whatever this date is in time, I'm gonna have to make things right, you would vote for it. You would be
No question.
no.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that
I'm
apples and apples and oranges.
Well, imagine being short $160,000 from year over to year.
Yeah,
$160,000 month to month to month. That's 160.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Huge amount of money.
just
So this,
and that's moving
from a CBO perspective, this going to a level playing field, putting you on a schedule similar to that of the district, is
An option we could offer, because what I heard Erica say is not all the schools want that.
that's why I truly believe that I'm not going to make this decision for people. I'm not making this decision for people. I want to make sure that we put something on the table that they can make a decision for themselves.
So can we ask staff to come up with 4 times a year what that would look like and bring that back to us?
Karina, what are your thoughts?
And I have one question, but does the district actually write a check back to the state?
Yes.
Yeah,
Take it
yeah.
back. And I think quite honestly, I'm just gonna say, I think I don't think there was a clear understanding about that. And I think that the district does true up. for
Yes.
sure.
With the state.
For
They-
sure, absolutely.
That from the people that I've spoken to, both school and beyond, if the district couldn't, if PPS as a district could not say, here's your money, then if they were going to give us $100,000 next year and we owed them 20, they're going to give us 80. They're taking their money.
That's different.
But they're going to
But
get
it is-
there.
No, but that's different. No,
Well, it
That's
is.
different than writing a check back.
that's different. Yeah, that's a different scenario. That's what I mean by the runway.
But
And that's why I asked you to physically write a check.
well, it's a true up, Joe. I mean, whether we write a check, we
No.
receive.
No, but don't minimize. Don't
But it
minimize
is
that from my
different.
business. What I'm
I'm not
saying is it's
minimizing
not. No. When you.
I'm not
So I
minimizing.
run a
It gets
business. So
deducted.
Right.
Do we write a check back at the end of the year or is it deducted out of the next year?
It's deducted out of the next year.
So that's the question is, do
That's
we
what-
have our CBOs write us a check back or do we deduct it out of their next year?
We deducted that out of over the course of the contract period. I'm not minimizing. Let me be
okay.
clear. I'm not minimizing. I'm
Right,
saying
that makes sense. Okay.
what Mr. McFerrin is saying is absolutely right. CBOs do not have a runway, like the district has an annual runway.
Because
That is exactly true.
Because the CBOs
What-
have a 1-year contract
Right.
that we
They have-
agreed
Oh,
to pay them
it's a-
And
for.
so
a
that's,
5-year contract with 1-year renewable.
and so that's why I went and said,
Oh,
is
we
it
can't do
possible
2 years.
to do 2, and it is not possible to do 2.
Right.
Because
That's
we
from the
have to
state,
make things
right?
right.
It's not possible
From a
to do
state
2.
perspective, we have to do things within the fiscal years. What we've been
Okay,
told.
that
Right,
makes sense. So
right.
that's why we can't give you a runway. We can't deduct it from the next year
So-
because the state doesn't allow that.
But
The
with
s-
standard payments throughout.
Whoa, hold on. Let's talk about that. So districts can do it.
But CBOs can't
The
per the
We
state law.
can't with our budget with outside contractors, which would include.
and that's from what I understand from
That's state
that's a
statute.
state
The
sanction.
statute.
That's not us.
Okay, we can do something about that.
Yeah, do something
That's
about that.
That's a state
Yeah.
thing. So if the state were to change that and say something different, then
Are you guys headed out or?
no.
We're waiting for public comment.
You're just standing because
Yeah.
you've
Oh,
been
did
sitting a
you guys
long
want to
time.
make comment?
Well, we are 15 minutes over.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's. Can we move this to the board discussion? How do we get this
No,
to?
no, so
Wait,
I'd
so-
like, I don't want to take the CBO thing out of, because I don't think we have a clear picture yet. I'd like the staff to come back to charter with what it might look like if we were to make a change to
I
quarterly.
wanted, how do
And
we,
then I want to also hear from
So-
other CBO leaders as well.
So can I just say, if there is a request for us to change true up in a contract to quarterly, if that is the request, I don't know if that is the request, but if that is the request, those are things that we typically do. That is our job, really, for Erica and I, is that we work with legal counsel and look at, are there adjustments to the contract? And is there anything that needs to be added to a CBO contract in the next year? We are happy to bring those things back and share that information with the committee. And I just want to say that I'm just sharing information that's part of what we do every year, is just look at like what are the
How can we
different
improve the contract itself for the next year?
And I would say that a lot of those elements are already in place because the person on our team who does the financials, every month, as we know, kids are dropped, kids are added, and then we find out a month later that they had other services. So we're always truing up month to month and taking in and out of different invoices.
And then
I'm sure.
But what I've heard you say, just to repeat back, so what I heard you say is, can we look at what it would look like if we did a true up every quarter?
offered that as an option
And
to
bring
those
that
CBOs
back?
that wanted it.
Absolutely, and the answer is
We need
yes.
counting
Absolutely.
over
We
there.
can look at that and
Can we
bring
just
that
get a little
back.
more clarity on what it is you want to look at? Like, what are we looking at to see what the amounts would be if, like, during a regular year or?
The amounts
it's
are kind of
possible.
irrelevant
I think
because
we're
it all
Yeah. I
comes
think
out at the end of the year.
the problem we're trying
So
to solve is some stability for CBOs. So I think the question is, would doing it quarterly offer stability? Like,
Yeah.
what might be the unintended consequences that could cause harm? It would be what I'd be interested in. And would it offer that goal of stability? And then I think a second conversation we need to have as a committee is, I've heard about facilities for a long time from you guys. But what can we, as we think about like our next bond, are there things we can do? I know there's lots of legal issues because they're not owned by PPS, the buildings. And so how do we talk about what are ways we can offer some runway and support to our CBOs? Because I think everybody on this committee is a passionate believer in supporting our CBOs. And we also are passionate, we don't want to take anything away from the kids that are enrolled in our traditional schools, but we see a great need here. And what are some creative ways we can meet some of our CBOs where they are? And I loved what Amy said about tying to our charters about doing a like statewide advocacy group, right? So what are ways we can come alongside our CBOs with some of that same kind of thing? And so that's the second problem I see that we're trying to solve, is that greater question about how do we answer some of the problems like facilities, like I know the SPED issue is a thorny one of when CBOs ran it themselves. We did have some that weren't able to do that well. We had others that were, so the district took it back over, and now there's this tension there. So how do we, continue to talk about those things in a way that makes sure our students are successful?
what are you putting your hand up and laughing about?
He was saying I was right on.
Yeah,
That
no,
we were
I think
we were tracking.
I think the special ed, because I'm hearing that some.
We should solve
I
one
spent a lot
problem
of time.
Yeah, let's solve one problem at a time, Amy says.
No, I'll just say this. I love working collectively with our CBOs.
Yeah.
But in this particular situation, there may be some unique issues that Rosemary Anderson faced,
Yeah.
given where we are
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And we need to
I'd say it's the same issues but amplified as
Yeah.
CBO.
Because of the sheer number.
Yeah.
The one thing I will just say about special ed, and I know we're short on time, is that we were out of compliance as a district.
Yeah.
And I might be off by a couple years, but I'm not off by much. I want to say for 16 years in a row, we were out of compliance. We were out of compliance for more than a dozen years in a row. And so one of the things that changed about 8 years ago, I don't remember, 6 years ago, is that we said for charter schools, for contracted alternative schools, for other schools, that we took it as an obligation for the district to really get back into federal compliance. And so that is why, just for information's sake, that is why that change was made, is because we're responsible for our students, as we should be as a district. So that is how that change happened.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on this matter?
Not today.
Okay. Do we have any public comments?
Ew.
All right. Fingers crossed that I can get my computer working.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. So, dear Directors Green, Constable, and Lowry, I am coming to you on behalf today of the Portland Public School students who attend PPS Public Charter School. On behalf of these students, I ask that you, the Charter School Subcommittee, bring to the PPS full board a request to right-size the pass-through amount
Great idea.
for Portland Charter School students. It really is. It's brilliant.
Think of that. And it's brilliant and legal. Look at that. You're meeting your
It's
bar.
so great. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
such
This is your
that-
moment.
Thank you. Such that the district would retain 10% instead of the current 20% in administrative fees. As you know, charter schools in Oregon face systemic challenges beyond the control of our sponsoring board. We pay some of the highest PERS rates in the state of Oregon at 26.58% in comparison to the 3.36% that the district office is required to pay for employees. For example, for Portland Village School in fiscal year 21-22, our PERS payments amounted to $393,000. For the same staff, PPS would have paid $52,000 and change.
It's just,
So right-sizing the pass-through would help offset these high PERS rates that charter schools pay. In Oregon, some other things to know is that there are no state requirements that charter schools be able to access public spaces or that we be given reduced rent. That is the case in some other places, but not in Oregon. So while other districts may have additional buildings that they're able to sell or lease to charter schools they sponsor, we know in PPS we are at maximum capacity on space and our buildings are fully utilized. As a result, PPS charter schools, if we are to find a location, we have to pay full market rate. This challenge is particularly relevant to Portland Village School, as we are needing to find a new location for our school after next year. We're looking at facing $26 a square foot in rent, and we're anticipating spending $1,092,000 annually on rent alone. So by right-sizing administrative fees, Portland charter schools, we'd be in a healthier financial position to pay these high rental rates. Some of the impacts of all of those high fees are that we are then have a really small bottom line. Once we've paid everything like that, then we're stuck trying to facilitate payment to our staff. It is hard for us to pay a competitive wage as compared to other schools and districts. This leads to high turnover rates, as you know. At PBS this year, we have 8 new teachers, which represents a third of our staff. Other PPS charter schools have had 50% turnover this last year. It's really high. Often our departing staff people want to stay at our schools, but they can't afford to do so. And the staffing challenges that we are all facing as educators right now in districts trying to find teachers, it's hard to do. Charter schools, which have historically struggled to compete, are now like at an extra disadvantage. Aligning the pass-through rates to accurately reflect administrative costs would allow our charter schools to offer more competitive salaries, which is important. And we know that these systemic difficulties are not something that you can control, but you do have the ability to right-size the pass-through rate that's allocated on behalf of PPS charter school students. And the current 20% that is retained by our district is, give or take. Now we've got some slight new data, but it's about 5 times the amount required to run the charter schools. So we are asking that you right-size this amount to that 10%, and that would align us to what the state-sponsored public charter schools make. And in closing, I just want to say we are very proud to be sponsored by Portland Public Schools.
and we're very glad to have you.
And we are deeply appreciative of the support of our district office and the board and the subcommittee. And we thank you for your hard work on behalf of students and schools. We want you guys to be paid for the work that you're doing.
They give us a good water bottle.
And they do. And we would like that payment reflect the actual costs associated with managing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you come and give public testimony when we vote and discuss on this, discuss and vote on this in the coming board meeting.
Board meetings.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we
Are we
adjourned
ready for me? Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
your
also
public comment is
speaking.
last. Oh.
And I'll preface this by saying a lot of what is I've written here, which I will read, we've covered today, and thank you for the robust discussion that you had, and thank you for the funding analysis. I'm going to touch on a few of those things, but it's nothing I think you haven't already unpacked somewhat today. I do want to say that all of the issues that everyone's been talking about today, and Director Green, thank you for opening with your statements about how we're still here. We're all in this room showing up to do the work. And I just want to impress upon you that time is of the essence. There is urgency behind this request on our part. Dr. Stackhouse mentioned in terms of staff retention and what we're looking at, we are all, and we all know this, but we're in an unprecedented time in education right now, coming through this pandemic, and we are facing challenges in terms of enrollment and staff retention that we have not faced before. So I do want to express the urgency behind this request before I read this. Thank you again for letting me speak. As you recall, I spoke at the last committee meeting, so thanks for having me again. I'm back today because this is by far the most important issue facing charter schools in Portland and can positively impact students and their families in Portland Public Schools.
Would you say your name for us?
I will. Sunita Sandos, I'm the administrator of the Emerson School. Thanks. And I do want to recognize that this conversation is uncomfortable, and you expressed that as well. We're discussing the use of public dollars. So it's the district's job to keep every public dollar possible for students, and it's the job of charter schools to advocate for every public dollar possible. And we would be remiss if we didn't do so. So that's why we're here today. So as uncomfortable as the discussions may be, we're here today to ask the PPS board to right-size the pass-through. We know why we're here. We get it. At our last committee meeting, Director Green, you asked us what the low-hanging fruit was. And this is it. I will move us along just to say, in regard to the conversation that was had about some of the numbers, retaining 20% of the state school funding seems too steep of an administrative fee, when in actuality it costs the district less than 4%. We've talked about that $710,000 of the PPS state school funding allocation. While changing the pass-through rate from 80 to 90% for charter schools will cost the district the $1.1 million, PPS still retains 1.3 over and above the cost of running the charter school program. That cost to the district, and this goes back to some of your points about $1.1 million is a ton of money. It's a big number, and it serves lots of students, possibly teaching salaries as well. It's got to come from somewhere, but it does represent 0.057 of this year's approved district budget. Just to, I was putting that into perspective for myself, and just as a reminder, and it came out of the funding analysis. And in contrast, the impact of charter schools will be absolutely enormous. It will allow Emerson School, my school, Portland Village School, Dr. Stackhouse's school, and all of the other charter schools sponsored by PPS to actually be able to pay our rent and pay our teachers and staff more appropriate salaries and benefits so that they can remain employed by our schools. As Dr. Stackhouse mentioned, many of our staff want to stay, and then they just cannot because of what we can pay and what we can offer. Essentially, this shift in pass-through means the difference in being able to sustain our school programs into the future or not. Over the past few years, we watched 2 Portland public schools, charter schools close, and we're hoping that this doesn't happen again on anybody's watch in this room. So as uncomfortable as it is for us to discuss this use of public funds, there's an opportunity that you have today. And Portland Public Schools students are depending on you.
so please consider increasing the pass-through from the state school fund to 90%. And please consider that an urgent request. I would say on behalf of all of the charter school directors, the sooner that could happen, the better for us. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and I think that's a brilliant idea.
Shocker.
How are you with a building? Because
Adjourn,
her
some of
building-
us have other
Yes, yes,
things.
yes.
Yeah, we're
You
good.
can keep, okay,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
We're
you.
adjourned. Sorry that we went over and you guys needed to.
We
That was
we
good.
are in, we have a